All right, with that, let's begin with our thoracic cavity. Have you thought about your thoracic cavity today? No, but let's begin. We said that the thoracic cavity had a sternum, had costal cartilages, had ribs, and the vertebra, right? So let's look at the structures in a little more detail now. Do you want to take these off during class? I think that's fine to have them up there because I'm not going to write the names on the blackboard anymore, but this way they'll be up when you come to class. You don't have to wait for me to get them and go through my writing. And so these are the names. Let's see now. We want the thoracic cavity. And we'll have the sternum, the parts of the sternum, 3 major parts. This whole thing is a sternum. I'm going to put it down here because I want to write for the other parts. And we have the manubrium, the first part, manubrium. We have the body. And what's this part called that looks like a sword? Xiphoid or xiphoid, whichever you like. Xiphoid process. That's this person, and it's sword-like, was where xiphoid comes from. Now we have what's called a jugular notch up at the superior aspect of the manubrium. This is the jugular notch. What's jugular mean? Means throat. So we're going to see the jugular vein. We're going to see this is the notch. You can feel it, palpate it there so you know where you are. Feel the indentation midline there? That's your jugular notch. We have the sternal angle where the manubrium meets with the body. This is the sternal angle. It's the most commonly fractured area of the sternum. You get hit in the front. It's the sternum that gets the sternal angle which gets fractured. So most frequently fractured area of sternum. And now we have to attach the ribs via the costal cartilages. We have 12 ribs. 7 of them are true. True ribs are 1 through 7. Why are they called true ribs? Because their costal cartilage attaches directly to the sternum. Then we have 5 false ribs. They don't attach directly to sternum. 3 of them attach to the superior costal cartilage. They just come up and insert in the costal cartilage. 3 of them to superior costal cartilage. And 2 of them do not attach anteriorly at all. They're called floating ribs. So we have 2 floating ribs. no anterior attachment. So we can show how these are attached. We have the first rib. Don't put it clear up because we've got to bring the clavicle in. Right here we're going to have first costal cartilage. And the second costal cartilage is at the sternal angle. At sternal angle in here. And then the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. So those are our true ribs attaching through the costal cartilage to the sternum. But the next ones then, if I have a costal cartilage coming in from the seventh here, we'll have the costal cartilage of the eighth attaching to the seventh. And the ninth attaches to the eighth. And the 10th to the 9th, and so forth, the superior cartilage. And then we'll have the floating ribs, 11 and 12 here. All the ribs then have a posterior attachment to what? Where do the ribs attach? What did we say in the last lecture? Which vertebra have facets for rib attachments? Thoracic. So all ribs attach posteriorly to thoracic vertebra. So that gives us our rib cage, or thoracic cage, technically. Now, as we look at the appendicular skeleton, it's hard to say which side of this eraser works, neither very well. Let's switch that one. That's much better. So as we start with the appendicular skeleton, we'll start with the pectoral girdle. And the pectoral girdle consists of two bones. We've seen these. The clavicle anteriorly and the scapula posteriorly. Clavicle and scapula. The clavicle will articulate with the sternum at the manubrium. So we have, let's put a clavicle here. This is medial, lateral. You can see that we have two curvatures on the clavicle. We have this curvature, which is medial, which is convex. And we have this curvature, which is lateral, which is concave. So take a moment, palpate your clavicle. Start it medially, feel it curving forward, then it really dips in as it goes laterally, right? Take it clear laterally. You're staying too medial. Take it clear over. You can feel the difference? Know your own body, so when someone comes to you and said, well, I've hit myself here, you could say, well, it's supposed to do this, and yours is not. So you'll always have your body as a foundation from which to work. So this medial articulation will be the sternoclavicular joint. So at X, we have the sternoclavicular clavicular joint. And at XX laterally, we're going to have the clavicular acromial joint, or the acromial clavicular, we can call it. Let's call it acromial, because the acromion is going to be part of the scapula. So laterally, we'll have the acromial clavicular joint. So that gives you just basic landmarks for your clavicle. But I think it's fascinating that your whole upper extremity only articulates with the axial skeleton here at this sternoclavicular joint. Isn't that amazing? All this is held up by muscles. The only bony joint is here. All right, let's move into the scapula. Scapula will be posterior, it's thin. It will lie over the 2nd to 7th ribs posteriorly. Lies over 2nd to 7th ribs posteriorly. It is triangularly shaped. And this is a posterior view. We'll have the spine. Let's take this one. The spine of the scapula expanding into this acromial process. So we'll have the spine coming across and then expanding into an acromial process. Spine and acromial process. And so it will divide the posterior scapula into 2 major segments, supraspinous fossa and infraspinous fossa. So this is our supraspinous fossa, and this will be our infraspinous. We give these because we'll have muscles here. Spinous fossa. Then we want to make a indentation here. This will be what's called the glenoid cavity. The glenoid cavity. Glenoid cavity. What occurs at the glenoid cavity? What's this? What is it? Humerus, sure. The head of the humerus articulates with the scapula at the glenoid cavity. So at the glenoid cavity, we have the head of humerus articulates here. That's on our posterior view. On our anterior view, we'll have a little process that will stick up something like this. This little process is called the coracoid process. You've had a coronoid process on your mandible, right? A condylar process on the mandible. Here's a coracoid process on the scapula. And this will receive the short head of biceps. Originates here. Just to give it some dynamics to remember it. But that's an anterior view. And you can't see it underneath the scapula. This is anterior. It's here underneath the clavicle, medial to the head of the humerus. All right, so much for our scapula. Let's go on then to the upper extremity. Where we'll have the arm, which we call the humerus, and it will have a head. It'll have a greater tubercle. So this is the head. Here's the greater tubercle. This is a posterior view, so you can see the head here, greater tubercle out here. And then we'll have the shaft coming down like this, which will have the deltoid tuberosity. And we'll have two necks. We'll have the anatomical neck between the head and the greater tubercle. This is the anatomical neck. And we'll have the surgical neck. What do you know about surgical neck? How many have broken their humerus? No, one. Do you know where you broke it? Distal or proximal? Proximal. That's more unusual, right? The fracture when it comes to the humerus most commonly comes at the surgical neck. Fracture most common at surgical neck. So it's important to know these vulnerable spots. Usually in class, I've never had one had a proximal, they have the distal. If we look at the distal end, then just break this and bring us down to a distal end. We'll have 1 and 2. One will be our medial epicondyle of the humerus. Medial, epicondyle. And 2, the lateral epicondyle. You can palpate these easily. Just put your hand in the anatomical position. Feel them there. Big bumps. Here they are. Anatomical position. Here's medial. Epi, what does epi mean? Epi means upon. Epidermis, upon the dermis when we get to the skin. Epicondyle, this smooth, rounded surface here, these are condyles. They have specific names, but I'm not giving you all names now. You'll get those later. But these are epicondyles. The lateral epicondyle is perhaps better known because when you get inflammation of a muscle, it hurts terribly, that attaches here. What do they call that condition? Tennis elbow. Any of you play tennis? Get sore elbows? Yes, I've had them too. Right there. It's inflammation on the lateral epicondyle of the muscle. Here will give us tennis elbow. Then we move down to our, oh, I don't want that eraser. Our forearm, where we had two bones. We had the radius laterally and the ulna medially. What are some characteristics here? On the distal end, we have the head of the radius. You can see the head here. It allows for rotation. We're going to talk about supination and pronation. There's the head of the radius. We then have a radial tuberosity just below it. And the biceps will insert here. The distal part of the ulna has two characteristics here. One is called the olecranon process. Olecranon process. You can feel it when you bend your elbow. It's the pointed portion there. Have you ever been jabbed by somebody with your olecranon process? It hurts, right? Giving you ideas, but there it is. You can see it. You can see very clearly in your book to see how clear the olecranon process is. And from an anterior view, it will have anteriorly, you'll see the semi-lunar notch. What does that mean? Semi-lunar. Half moon. Maybe if I can get a separate one because you'd see it more clearly. Okay, what bone is it? Femur, good. It's not the one we want. Is it femur? No, it's not. What is it? Pardon? You don't know it yet. Here's a very nice humerus. See the rounded head? See the large, greater tubercle? Well, we're after something I don't see. Here it is. No, what bone is that? I just gave it to you. Radius. See that rounded head? See the tubercle there for the biceps? I don't know. Where's our ulna? There's an ulna. Can you see that big notch? That's your semilunar notch that you see right at your elbow to allow it to function the way it does. So you have a semilunar notch, an olecranon process, and then proximally, wait a second, this is wrong. This is proximal. Sorry. This is distal. Too much to give today. So distal will have the styloid process. Styloid process. But fortunately, we have a styloid process on the ulna too, so that makes it easy for you. And this then brings us to our wrist bones. And the wrist bones are the carpal bones. We have 8 of them. Carpal bones. So they're 2 rows of 4 bones each. And you'll get those in your advanced anatomy. I'm not going to take the time for them, but you can see them very clearly here. Little bones down here at the wrist. And then your metacarpals, of which you have 5, which are your palm bones, metacarpals for the palm, and there are 5 of them. And the heads of the metacarpals, what do they make up? What do you see? The knuckles, right. The heads of the metacarpals equal your knuckles. Funny word, what does it mean? And then you have the phalanges, which are fingers. How many phalanges in your fingers? 3. In your thumb? How many? 2. All right, that'll bring us down now so we can start our pelvic girdle. Pelvic girdle. And we've said that, what does pelvis mean? Pelvis means basin. Would you like to have a basin that looked like that? Be pretty faulty, wouldn't it? But that's where the name came from. Pelvis equals basin. 3 bones, the ilium, the ischium, and the pubic bone. These 3 all come together in one part. I'm going to use, if I can find one here. Here we go. Here's the part. And all 3, ilium, ischium, and pubic bone, come together in what's called the acetabulum. What does acetabulum mean? What's acetic acid? Vinegar, right? So tabulum, cup, vinegar cup. Who knows? But that's what it's called. I mean, you may be hard up and you're out for a picnic and you find a pelvis, you have a cup, right? Who knows? I don't know. Anyhow, so the 3 all come together in what's called an acetabulum. So just remember acetic acid, you've learned that. And so it will receive, what's it going to receive? Here's your big femur. Fits right in there. You watch those ballet dancers. They have lots of, it's amazing though what it can do, isn't it? But that's for the head of the femur. So in the receives head of femur. All right, let's look at individual characteristics of each bone so you can have something to identify each bone. The ilium we're going to give the anterior iliac spine. Here's my ilium, and here's the anterior iliac spine. Anterior iliac spine. We're going to see how important it is when we attach ligaments to it. But at the moment, it's a landmark. Another landmark for the ilium is the sacral. Here's your sacrum. Here's your ilium. The sacroiliac joint. Posteriorly, we have the sacroiliac. The anterior spine was anterior, posterior. The sacroiliac joint. Why is it so important? Well, it's taking all the weight from the upper body, transferring it down to the pelvic girdle, and this joint sometimes loosens with aging. Back pain when this starts to loosen. So you need to exercise for your full lifetime to keep all your joints strong. So let's look then at our ischium. What's a landmark for our ischium, or a characteristic? The ischium is posterior and inferior. Posterior and inferior. I've mentioned them before. These great big strong bone projections here. These are the ischial tuberosities. You are sitting on your ischial tuberosities. Ischial tuberosities. You can put your hand on your buttocks if you slide it under. It's okay, this is anatomy. You can put your hand through and you'll feel how sharp they are. Try it, sure, some of you are daring. Feel them there? Have you ever known how sharp they are back there? They're pretty pronounced, aren't they? Those are your ischial tuberosities. All right? So what else do we have with the ischium? The ischium also has a huge foramen. See that big hole? There's our acetabulum. It's called the obturator foramen. So it has ischial tuberosities and the obturator foramen. So it's a large one. Part of the foramen is covered with connective tissue. You have the foramen to lighten the pelvis, but part covered with CT, connective tissue. The open part receives blood vessels and nerves. So open part, blood vessels and nerves. So we need that to get the vessels down to the lower extremity. Then we have the pubic bone. The pubic bone will be most anterior of our pelvic bones. Pubic bone. And again, there are two of them, and they meet in the midline. Here's the pubic bone. Meets in the midline in what's called a pubic symphysis. It's a joint, midline, pubic symphysis. What does symphysis mean? Together. What kind of cartilage are we going to have here? What kind of cartilage did we have in the intervertebral disc? Fibrocartilage. Good for you. Because they're strong, you need a strong cartilage between the bones here, fibrocartilage in the pubic symphysis. And this joint, you can appreciate why, loosens during childbirth. It loosens during childbirth. So there are differences between the male and female pelvic cavities, as you can appreciate. So sex differences in pelvis. We'll just give the male because the female's opposite then. Which have we got here? It could be either, sort of in between. The male obviously is narrower, right? He's narrower. The pelvis is heavier. Males on average weigh more than females. Heavier. And what else are we going to find? It's deeper. She has a shallow one. You want to get through there fast. This is deeper. So these are basic, very fundamental characteristics of your pelvic cavity. Now we go on down to the lower extremity. We've already talked about the largest and heaviest bone in your body. Largest, heaviest equals what? Femur. Good for you. Thank you for responding. So we'll see that medially it has a head, it has a neck, it has this greater trochanter, and medially it will have a lesser trochanter. These are just areas where muscles attach. We'll be having muscles coming in on these trochanters, just like we have muscles coming into our tubercles on our upper extremity. And we can tell whether they're greatly athletic individuals sometimes by the comparative size. Pretty good. That's a pretty good greater trochanter. Pretty active individual. Let's see what this one has. Yeah, big one. This is a heavy bone. This was a big person. These are real bones. Some of the bones you have in lab are plastic, but these are real. So we can see very clearly on this, here's the head, the neck, the greater trochanter, and the lesser trochanter. Now, what's important to know about this, what area do you think would be most frequently fractured in your femur? The neck, sure. It's at an angle there. It's going to get the forces down. This can be weight-bearing more, but not that neck. So neck fractures most readily. Is anybody broken the neck of a femur? If we had a population over 65 and asked, oh, one person has, how'd you do it? Backflip. On the hard surface, not on a diving board? You landed on the ground wrong. Yeah, that's unusual though, isn't it? More older people break their neck of their femur in parking lots at night in the dark. You know those obstacles that are there to tell you when to stop driving your car, and they're walking across a parking lot at night and they trip on that? Very common to crack the neck. So always watch your step at night in a parking lot. Neck, common site of fractures in older people. No, people are afraid because if you fracture your bones when you're older and you become inactive, everything degenerates. So you've got to learn all about your body to be able to keep it healthy so it doesn't degenerate. All right, with this, we'll come down. We have a shaft. And we'll have large condyles. We'll have 1 and 2. 1 will be our medial epicondyle. And 2 will be a lateral epicondyle. And what do we have anteriorly between the condyles? What's protecting this knee joint? What's this? The patella, your kneecap. Put your leg out in front of you, relax it, and feel your patella. You can do it when it's relaxed. When it's tight, you can't move it around. You can feel it. So, in between the condyles, you have the patella. What is the patella? It's known as a sesamoid bone. What does sesamoid mean? Sometimes we have them and sometimes we don't. Do we have a sesamoid bone? Yes, we do. Terrific. So it's a sesamoid bone. And sesamoid means seed. Look like a seed to, I don't know what kind of fruit would have a seed that large. Maybe avocado, who knows? The sesamoid bone has the characteristic of being found in a tendon. Most of your bones aren't in a tendon. A sesamoid bone is. What's the tendon that the sesamoid bone, the patella, is found in? What's the big muscle in the front of your leg? Your quads. You have your quadriceps femoris coming down. They come into a tendon, which is going to insert on your tibia, but before it inserts, it houses, I can't do this with chalky hands, it houses a sesamoid bone. So this one in the knee, sesamoid bone, thank you, I'll catch that, housed in tendon of quadriceps. See, four-headed quadriceps. You have biceps, 2 heads, triceps, 3 heads. Here's quadriceps in your anterior thigh. Quadriceps femoris. So having this tendon here gives strength as it comes from this massive muscle to insert down here on the tibia, and it will stabilize the joint and protect the knee joint. All right, well, we'll show slides and then go on, but we covered a lot. But again, you review it each time. Every time we bring something in, we bring blood vessels in, we review it. We muscles, we review it. But I have a brand new slide to show you today, and I can hardly wait to show it to you. When I saw this picture, I said I have to have it for my 131 class. So I want to be sure you see it. Can we have the lights quite far out, please, so we can give it its full view? And we need to focus it a bit, please. There. That's about as good as it comes. But have you ever seen a skeleton in these positions? I just think it's dynamic. Why, for hundreds of years, do we just show a skeleton standing there? Look at them. Isn't that dynamic? Isn't that beautiful? This is what we just reviewed. Our manubrium, our body, our xiphoid, our costal cartilages, our clavicle, our humerus, our radius and ulna. Here's our pelvis, femur. Here's our patella. Isn't this wonderful? But it's a nice way to study when you can see them like this. In the next one. And here we are with the manubrium, with the first costal cartilage. Here's our sternal angle, second costal cartilage, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and then the 8th through 10th coming up, and the 11th and 12th being floating ribs. Here's the xiphoid process. Next one. And this is our scapula. Here's the spine. Here's the acromion, the supraspinous fossa, the infraspinous fossa, the coracoid process. Here it is here on this anterior view. The glenoid cavity here for the head of the humerus. Next one. And we see it again, a good picture of the glenoid cavity. Coracoid process here, acromial process. Here's our clavicle. This will be medial. It's convex, concave, lateral. Next one. And here's the head of the humerus. Here's the greater tubercle. If we turn it over, we have the head and a lesser tubercle. The important structure I should have mentioned, but we'll catch it later, the intertubercular groove. We're going to have major muscles attached to that intertubercular groove between the two tubercles in the next one. And this just shows that you have this sort of styloid processes at each distal end of the forearm. But here's the head of the radius, our tubercle, our olecranon notch, our, semilunar notch, and our olecranon. But you see the semilunar notch from anterior, you can't tell that it's a notch. You have to look at it laterally. But the head of the radius fits right in there, so it can rotate. We'll see that when it does this motion. Next one. And this seems what happens. It's a radiograph showing fractures of the ulna and the radius of a 10-year-old child. Notice the distal epiphyseal plates of the ulna and the radius. So you have your ulna and your radius. Look at the epiphyseal plate here. You say, what in the world does that mean? Excuse me. Get chalk in there. Let's at least wait until the end of the lecture. Sorry about that. The epiphyseal plate is where your long bones grow. We're going to talk about bone development. So when you look at a skeleton and you see these plates, you know this individual has to be less than 21. You lose all your epiphyseal discs by 21 on the average. All right, so that's that for today.